I've been down here too long. It's time to ascend.
Fidelity.
Villains emerges.
Women don't. They basically just don't think like that.
Hey, stud. I thought we had something together.
If you men only knew.
You didn't invite me, so I crashed.
I am Catwoman. Hear me roar.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise. And at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Give us a little Christmas present. Come on now. We love you.
Holiday season.
Do it.
We decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover. Patreon subscribers also get an honor shout out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for, holy shit, almost 2 years.
Yeah.
There's almost 50 bonus episodes waiting for you guys. So if you guys haven't made the jump, there are a lot of bonus episodes.
What is this, 99?
This is episode 99.
Whew.
Yeah.
Wow. That's nuts.
So almost half of the episodes are bonus episodes, and they're waiting for you over at patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. So you haven't made the jump. Definitely consider doing that. Speaking of which, we do have one patron to thank this week. Just the one, but we appreciate him, and his name is Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
It's just Kevin.
I appreciate you.
Thanks for joining us, Kevin, and thanks for getting all those bonus episodes. We hope you're enjoying them.
Yes, enjoy.
The other plug for the week, as always, is iTunes. If you guys are listening on iTunes, make sure to give us a good old rating and review over there, preferably a positive one.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Helps us climb the ranks over there.
Otherwise, I don't know if it'll help us out too much.
But you know what? I like reading them anyway. So leave whatever review you can. Helps us find new listeners no matter what. So thanks in advance for doing that. Hopefully you already have. But if not, come on, guys.
Come on.
It's the holiday season.
Yeah.
Let's get a little charitable around here.
Yeah, spread that kindness.
Exactly.
That spirit.
That's it for the plugs. Welcome back to another episode here. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me is my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back.
Welcome back to another episode. I think 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you guys, free listeners, would have heard from us, and we would have had special guest Jardane Searles on to talk the Slumber Party Massacre films, the slasher franchise written and directed entirely by women, one from 1982, one from 1987. The first one a bit of a Halloween clone, the second one a little bit of a Nightmare on Elm Street, but with a uniquely musical rockabilly vibe.
I was just so pleasantly surprised with that second one, man. I had no idea that it was going to be that. It's unbelievable.
If you want to see a slasher film with a real deal musical sequence in it, that's that I think that might be the only one.
So far, I think it's the only one that I've seen. So,
and if you haven't heard that episode, again, that was 2 weeks ago. That was on any podcast listener of choice. But last week we had our bonus episode for all the Patreon listeners out there, and we did Martin Scorsese. The Irishman is the talk of the town. All kinds of awards, nominations, all kinds of people being able to watch it since it's immediately accessible on Netflix.
Everybody's loving it.
Everyone should be watching it if you're not. And to celebrate its release, we talked about Goodfellas and Casino, the other two movies in sort of his vaguely thematically connected mobster movie trilogy, and also it was partially in part because Jamie and I got to see Goodfellas on a 35mm print. So we were like, if we're gonna watch it anyway, we might as well talk about it.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you want to hear us talk about those two films, and if you want to hear us talk about The Irishman, maybe might be coming up here.
Maybe.
We do like to do some bonus transmissions for our Patreon listeners too. So if you want to hear that episode, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast, you can find it. That's last week's episode. And yeah, I very much can't wait to talk about The Irishman.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, very
and get
stoked.
to rewatch it.
Yeah.
I've only seen it once.
I've seen it 3 times,
Three
which
times.
probably
That's like
should
that's
give
10
away
hours.
my opinion on the movie.
That's crazy, man. It's awesome. I can't wait to rewatch it.
Yep. So this is going to
It's
be the Martin
unbelievable.
Scorsese show. Clearly heading towards the end of the year here.
Yeah.
But speaking of which, this is the holiday season.
Yes.
We are here. I think when this
We brought
episode
some wholesome Christmas movies for you this year.
exactly, we are going guestless this week, as we did last year, because we kind of like to choose our own Christmas double feature. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe one day we'll find a guest who can pick our Christmas
Yeah, man.
double feature for
Be
us.
worthy of such an episode.
But the Christmas episode is a very important episode on the show. Last year we did the Canadian iconic
Hell yeah.
underground horror film known as Black Christmas.
Which we're going to be playing at the Highland. I'm so
Yes.
excited. We're going to get to see that in the theater.
Somehow we're playing that at the theater that I help program for everyone, so I'm stoked to do that. But we
Yeah.
also paired it last year with Silent Night, Deadly Night. We kind of did
Yes.
Holiday Slashers was the double feature.
So good. I couldn't believe how good it was.
Yep.
It was kind of like a similar thing of like Slumber Party Massacre, where I was just kind of expecting it to be so bad it's good, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's elements of it, but mostly I really enjoy that movie. It's great.
Yeah, Silent Night, Deadly Night, weirdly psychological and fractured filmmaking film.
Yeah.
Like, weirdly, I don't know why that
couldn't
movie...
believe how dark
I
it
can't
goes.
believe I was taking that movie seriously, and I
know.
I like any movie where they kill Santa and his blood squirts all over a bunch of children. That's just cinema to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was last year's episode, and for anyone who's been listening for a long time, they might actually even remember that on that episode, I brought up my 2 personal favorite Christmas films, and so that's what we're going to do this year.
Oh, yeah.
This is a Josh Lewis double feature.
Some
These
doozies.
are my personal favorite films to watch. I watch them pretty much every December.
Yep.
Just because I don't know why.
Get the whole family some hot chocolate.
Everyone around the fireplace, they got the nice sweaters on. Bring the children in.
Of course.
And we are going to talk about psychosexual existentialism around the holidays.
Yes. Just his loneliness and horniness.
Yes, this might seem like an odd pairing, but hear me out.
Yes.
Both of these films, despite being on polar opposite ends of the stylistic spectrum, both of them take Christmas as a setting, mostly as a means of wrestling with the holiday glitz, the glowing lights, the bright colors, and how they are used as kind of like a mask to cover up what we might really feel around that time, what we might really desire. And the big one, the big commercial and moneyed interests that control us around that time of year. Take on the commercialism of the holiday at the same time. Both movies are also insanely horny and existential, as we've mentioned. And to me, that weirdly enough, that is a more truthful depiction of the holidays than what you'll find in the basic Christmas canon. So, though it might sound like we're going to be talking out of our ass, we will get into the specifics of both of these films, and you will see that this is not really a conspiratorial reading of the film. It's really in the text of both of these films.
Yeah, it's pretty, it's right there in front of you.
And the first film is obviously Tim Burton's expensive studio sequel to his original Batman, with Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton playing Batman and the Joker. And that film is Batman Returns, which is somehow a gothic melodrama about traumatized psychopaths with a costume fetish trying to kill and fuck each other.
Yeah.
The other
spot
one,
on analysis.
and the other one is Stanley Kubrick's final film from 1999, Eyes Wide Shut, which weirdly enough actually has the same premise almost.
Yeah, it's like exactly the same.
Costume fetish, murder,
just take out
sexual
the gadgets.
perversion. Definitely when you get into the old money that this stuff comes from, when it comes from Christopher Walken's businessman character and the things that Tom Cruise sees. So though a bit more narratively ambiguous and maybe even qualitatively more artful and independently made, we'll say.
Yeah.
Even though I think it still costs like $50 million
It
or something.
had to.
Yeah.
That thing, like, it's just the attention to detail, especially with the famous sequence.
Well, and I was going to say
unbelievable.
we'll get into it too, because even the stuff that doesn't look like it should be expensive was super expensive
Oh, really?
for a reason that we're going to get into when we get
Interesting.
into Eyes
Okay.
Wide Shut. And
Hell
I
yeah.
think it's part of my thesis as to why the movie really works.
Yeah.
So it'll be
Cool.
interesting to talk about that as well.
Very awesome.
And weirdly enough, I realized the reason that I brought these films up when talking about Black Christmas was because of the glow of the Christmas lighting on people's faces.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
why I brought it up.
And especially with Black Christmas, it's pretty much exclusively
That's
used
how
for
it's lit.
horror elements.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
which is-
and we'll talk about Eyes Wide Shut too, but that was how they lit Eyes Wide Shut. So I
Right.
was like, there you go.
Yeah.
There's the connection. But anyway, that's the double feature for you guys today. We are getting really weird and horny and violent.
That's right.
For your Christmas listening pleasure. I'm sure a lot of you are having family drives down wherever you're going. Just put this on the
yeah,
speakers.
this will be great.
It's going to be a great talk. It's going to be very family friendly.
Yeah. It's time to teach these kids about old money, you know?
And with that being said, we are actually going to talk about the technical children's film first.
Yeah, I guess. That's
Tim
the first
Burton.
point I'm going to bring up.
Yeah, I definitely had a VHS that I wore out of this, and
Yeah.
I am shocked
I can't
that I was
believe it.
allowed to own
I'm
this
calling
movie.
my mom after.
So we are going to talk about Tim Burton's Batman Returns from 1992.
He plots a foul reign of destruction.
My dear penguins, thanks to Batman, the time has come to punish all of Gotham!
You missed.
All right, so we are talking Batman Returns, the 1992 American superhero film directed by Tim Burton. Mm-hmm. Obviously based on the DC Comics character of Batman and the sequel to the 1989 film Batman. And the thing worth noting probably upfront about this is that technically the conception for this film was a total cash grab.
Oh, okay.
And that might be shocking because it doesn't feel like one.
Not at all.
And I'll tell you exactly
I mean,
the
it makes sense because I know Batman was such a big thing when it
was a
came out.
really big
so
movie.
it makes sense to me that they're going to be like, well, we got to get a sequel out here and all that.
And they wanted it fast. That was the thing
Oh,
too,
okay.
because the original Batman was actually one of the first films to get kind of like a really like geek centric marketing campaign, like kind of like
Okay.
what all marketing is now.
Right.
The original Batman was one of the first films to really go all out.
Be
with
risky at that point too, right? Because they
Yes.
wouldn't know if people would really be going for that kind of a scene.
Yes, exactly. So they really like leaned into it, and
Well,
it
worked
didn't.
out.
And people were stoked to watch it.
Yeah.
Without even like, didn't even matter the quality of the film. Like everyone was going to show up and watch that because people were actually really ecstatic about just the idea of a Batman movie.
Yeah.
And then
'Cause
obviously
before that, the only
Tim Burton
thing-
at the time too, also a really exciting name in film at the time.
For sure,
You know, you
and
get
also
to-
like knowing his style, you know, he's got kind of that wacky style, a little bit gothic, so it does work really well with the city of Gotham.
Yes.
Especially when we get to like more of the comic book version of the at least Gotham. I think he definitely takes liberties with the characters themselves, which I love.
Not
I do
a great,
love that he does.
We will say not necessarily a great faithful
But
adaptation of the comic character.
but I think Tim Burton's aesthetic is fucking perfect for Batman.
Oh, yeah.
like that gothic darkness. It's great. That works.
Yeah,
well.
I mean he did a lot of it in the first film too, where he took
like the gargoyles on the the buildings and stuff.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, and like these really tall skyscrapers that actually kind of like remind you of what like kind of like 1930s city dystopias kind of looked like.
For sure.
It actually kind of does look like Fritz Lang's Metropolis and stuff like that. That was kind of the vibe that he went for when he was conceiving his Gotham. He went back all the way to German Expressionist stuff, and he continues
that makes
it.
total sense.
He
for
continues it here, but the thing that was really amazing about this was that Warner Brothers wanted a sequel really, really badly. And Tim Burton actually, he said when he read the screenplay for the first film, he was actually kind of bored by it. Like he was kind of like it was a cash job for him.
Yeah.
He was like he did good work on it and he tried to make it his own, but he wasn't that passionate about that film. So when they asked him to do a sequel, he was kind of like, there's this film called Edward Scissorhands. I kind of want to do that.
Right.
So he did that instead. So they started conceiving one on their own, and apparently it just had this screenplay where like Catwoman and Penguin went on a
this
journey.
Almost didn't happen in a sense, like at least in the way that we're seeing it now.
Like this movie was going to get made by Warner Brothers independently of Tim Burton. Yes. Right. And they even hired someone to write the sequel, and it had like the Penguin and Catwoman like hunting for buried treasure or something.
It's like going back to the '60s show or whatever.
Like they wanted to go like fucking like it was crazy. So basically, what they did is they couldn't get it to work. They couldn't get a screenplay to work. So they waited for him. They waited for Tim Burton, and basically what they said is they loaded a giant truck of cash. Basically, they brought it to him, and they said, "We will give you this, and we will stay off your back. You can make what you want to do with it. We just want you to make another one." So he was given unprecedented level of creative control.
Well, it so happens that I'm feeling really horny right now.
Yeah, they were like, you got to put Penguin in it. You got to put Catwoman in it. And so he hired the writer behind Heathers to redraft the screenplay, which is like a pretty like meta kind of like subversive teen film, actually.
Okay.
And he hired him to bring on the screenplay and do it. And he's like, let's really turn these comic book characters like inside out. Like let's take a look at the character of Catwoman and how she's so sexualized in her comics, and let's run with that. Let's do crazy shit. So basically, he got to just go insane. At one point, he was using up 50% of the Warner Brothers studio lot on his sets for this movie.
Wow.
They were like,
so these were huge, like just giant.
Yeah, like Warner Brothers gave him more money, more access, and more control than he's been ever given on any project, probably.
Yeah. So do you know by any chance like the scale of those sets? Like for instance, the town city hall area. Like is that whole?
I
thing?
haven't seen pictures of them, but the Warner Brothers lot.
Yeah, they're huge,
massive.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah, he would
50% of it. Wow.
Yeah, at one point, the production was taking up 50% of, and they were using that for every production that they were making. So to use it for one film, as like unheard of.
They were really putting all their cash into this one. Wow.
Yes. And so he basically got to just somehow take over Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And we're like, let's take one of the most famous comic book characters, and I want to just make it like a psychosexual opera about like trauma and power. And apparently, kids came out of this movie crying.
Yeah. I see. That's something I wanted to bring up was rewatching this yesterday. I couldn't believe that I watched it when I was like 10 or whenever I was.
I watched this on like all the time.
Because it's so sexually explicit. It's not obviously there's more subtle things too, but there's stuff that's just blatant. And like those innuendos, the puns, they're relentless. They never stop.
Yeah, well, and it was so funny. I was watching it and I was thinking, wow, that's a really explicit innuendo. And then the next thing out of Penguin's mouth is raw sexual charisma. And I was like, well, that's just not an innuendo. That's just like explicit.
He even has a line where he says something like, he's like, I'll show you my flipper trick. And I'm just like, at this point especially, dude, what is that?
Yeah, he's mostly trying to become mayor so he can grope people.
Yeah, that's what
pretty
it seems.
Explicitly.
Yeah.
I mean, he says it.
Yeah, the whole point of him is just to get ass, it seems.
Yes. So this is a very.
I mean, it definitely isn't a good tell when the candidate for a mayor starts it off with "burn, baby, burn." You know, it's like I don't think he has the best intentions for this city.
No, and I mean, if there's anyone out there who hasn't seen Batman Returns, the basic premise is that it's not really a story about Batman. That's kind of the thing that most people have to learn.
He really
about
is
this movie.
secondary. Yeah.
I mean,
he's kind of just figuring out what's going on.
He doesn't
but
even
the
show
focus,
up on screen until like 20 minutes into the movie.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, the real character focus is both Penguin and Catwoman more so. Batman's almost just like reacting to what they're doing rather than really being a part of the character development.
Right, and both of these villains, Catwoman played by Michelle Pfeiffer in what I think is genuinely just one of her best performances. And it's just an amazing performance in general. And then same goes for fucking Danny DeVito playing the Penguin.
Yeah,
He's so he was
gross
nominated for a Razzie for Penguin.
You fuckers. Every week you tell me something that I'm just like so upset about. That's insane. Because he gives everything to this role. Like he's disgusting throughout the entire thing. The whole time he has to play this guy with like black liquid coming out of his mouth at all times.
He put mouthwash and food coloring in his mouth so that it looked like he was like oozing
just
all the time.
All the time. Yeah. And it's just every little thing that he does is both. It's very strange and over the top, but I mean, Tim Burton creates such a world that it makes perfect sense that he's doing all of this. He's doing all of this in. It's just I can't believe he got a Razzie. That's unbelievable. It's such a it's a brave performance. It really is. Like holy shit. You know like it's pretty risky to do something like that.
Yeah, well, and to somehow
even in this universe
and to somehow manage like genuine like emotion and soul under all that makeup.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because, he is playing a very heightened performance. Obviously, it's a very tick-laden performance because he's playing just a very exaggerated character in terms of even just the look. Like, his freaking umbrellas that he has and his, like, giant pointed nose, obviously, to make him look
even
bird-like.
Everything from, like, the way he moves. He's got the penguin waddle and everything like that.
They give him, like, this potato-shaped body.
Yeah, with,
that's,
like little stick legs, it looks like, almost. Yeah, it's unreal.
He's wearing like a onesie and like a giant fur coat.
Yeah, the whole time. The same onesie, like the whole movie. It almost looks like it gets dirtier throughout the whole thing.
And like and he's got a top hat and a monocle, and it sounds insane, but somehow it makes sense in this universe because he
has an army of penguins. They live in the sewer. There's just it's fucking batshit.
Well, Burton he has no sense of realism.
Yes.
So
pretty much in any of his films, like even the stuff like Edward Scissorhands, like we
Beetlejuice,
like this, like the suburbs still look unnatural and all that. So
right, like he's really stylistically like extreme, I would say. Like he really leans into like
the fairy tale aspect.
Yeah, and he really leans into obviously the expressionism, like the really shadowy lighting, the unbelievable production design of like the sets.
Oh my god!
And the matte paintings of the city and stuff that they do. I think they said that Bo Welch was the guy who did the production design, and he looked at fascist architecture, World Fair architecture, Russian architecture, and German expressionism. Those were the things that he mostly took from.
Clicks for sure.
Yeah, but also he has like this really like snowy, steely look, obviously, because like the city itself is kind of like this giant concrete like cemetery looking thing.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of blues and whites on steel and concrete, and then when you add in the Christmas colors. His vision is just like these imposing skyscrapers with like brass fixtures and like giant lettering, like the building that's like just the giant hall of records.
Yeah.
It looks straight out of like a Fritz Lang movie, like just straight up.
Oh, absolutely.
It does look like a 1930s vision of like a sci-fi dystopia. And then when it's not doing that, it's on the ground. It's doing like department stores and lavish parties and mansions.
Like, one of my favorite shots is the neon lighting where she hits out the O and the T or something like that, and it says hell here. And that's right when she gets her whole like Catwoman transformation.
Which what an amazing sequence in general.
Oh yeah,
Catwoman
absolutely. I love like she's spray painting all of her pink things and like
goth girl.
Exactly. She's gone full goth girl. And I just
right
love
after
that
being
shot.
murdered by Christopher Walken.
Yeah,
right?
I love that shot because it's like surrounding her house is just complete darkness of the city, but you have that one little lighting where it says hell is here, and then she's got the black skin tight leather that just it's got a shine to it as well.
Yeah, which
So
I was
it's
going to say,
like-
by the way, apparently they had to vacuum seal her inside that outfit.
Holy shit.
And that they had to actually let her out of it like every 5 to 10 minutes or else she would faint.
Wow. Good for her. My God. That's crazy.
Which maybe gives a little bit of character to some of her expressions that she makes while she's like fighting people and stuff and doing like the huffing and like
Yeah, for sure.
even though textually it's supposed to be that she's kind of like doing this gymnastic stuff that she's doing where she's like fighting people and flipping around and stuff like that. But yeah, when it's not the department stores and lavish parties and stuff, for Selena, it's like dilapidated alleyways of like crumbling bricks.
Yeah.
For Penguin, obviously, it's raw sewage and broken pipes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like the design of this world is so thoroughly like laid out.
I also love even like when we go to Bruce's mansion, it's never shown as like this big lit up thing. It's always dark or like fireplace lit or something like that. And it just... It gives you this sense of just huge loneliness for it being a part of this giant house and like
I also love before he gets called in to do his bat signal thing, he's just sitting in a chair waiting.
Yeah, and he's so he has
subtle, no life outside of him.
Right, it's such a subtle performance of that part too, because you can tell just within his little he raises his head and his eyes kind of like open up wider. And it's just, you can tell that he's excited. He's like, oh, I have something to do tonight. Even though I'm a fucking billionaire and, you know, has access to whatever it is. He's just lonely. He's waiting for a criminal to interact with.
Yes,
to connect with.
Well, and that's so funny to me too, and I think it really gets at the heart of the Batman character, which I mean, a lot of people have talked about the Batman character where they go, he's obviously.
I think it really does a good job with the character here. Yeah, right. It's like I don't think he's taking much liberty with that at all.
No, well, and especially with the idea of Batman as a character who's like this rich guy who goes out at night and say what you will about them. He goes up and he beats up like mentally ill people living on the streets most of the time.
Yeah.
Even though some of them might be cartoonishly like the Riddler or something like that. But this one takes that more seriously because it says that, this film, it does have the two major villains, but it has a lot of sympathy for the two major villains. Like it has a lot of sympathy for Danny DeVito as the Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. And the real villain of the movie is really Christopher Walken, who is someone that Bruce Wayne wouldn't even think to go into his office and beat the shit out of him, right? So like that's the difference, is he's sitting there waiting for crime.
He doesn't have a costume.
Right. So even though Bruce Wayne is technically, he's supposed to be like the good billionaire who wouldn't do what that guy does, he doesn't think I should beat him up and tell him to stop doing crimes. He's like, he's waiting for the poor people to come out of the sewers, or for
his crimes have a contract connected to them.
Right, exactly. And the movie, weirdly enough, does like address that, because you feel really bad for the two main villains in this movie, especially like as much as Penguin does some pretty monstrous stuff by the end of the film. His death is really sad, and you're just like, man. And especially because they do a good job of separating him, or by comparing him to Bruce Wayne, by saying like, look, he would have been like a private school bunkmate of yours if he didn't look weird.
I love that scene too, where it shows the kind of like he actually empathizes with the Penguin in the scene where he's just like, I hope he finds his parents. Like where he's like instantly making that connection, and then that kind of I'm alone and in that same boat just through the television. Like I love how that he always has a lot of things where he sees like Batman's always just watching through a screen, hoping that he's gonna find something else to do or somebody to connect with or whatever it is. And I don't know. He captured the loneliness of Batman perfectly. In this film.
I mean, like this movie really hammers home the loneliness of like a lot of these characters, and the idea of how lonely do you have to be to go out at night and like take on this mission, right? Like
exactly.
To dress up and go crazy and pretend and feel like you're being your truest self at night, dressed up in a costume, right?
Yeah,
like there's an inherent just loneliness.
And speaking on that a little bit too, there's one scene, and it's for me it played for comedy, because there's a part where Batman, or Bruce, I guess, he's like, I'm gonna take the pole that he has, or no, the torture device that he has to walk in, and Alfred is just like, I'm gonna take the stairs. And then they both get to the Batcave at the same time. And that just gave me this kind of vibe that Bruce is like playing a game in a sense, where he's just kind of like, I'm Batman.
It's
you know,
a look.
I'm so excited about it. And yeah, exactly.
Like he's playing dress up.
He's playing a part, exactly. And I thought that was such a... It's played for a joke, but it's actually a cool little subtle thing of his character, I think.
Yeah, well, and it really hammers home how he's connected to all of like the major figures in this movie, because I mean, two of them obviously dress up and pretend to be something else, and then Max Schreck, by the way, an allusion to Nosferatu. That's the lead actor of the film Nosferatu.
Oh, okay.
Max Schreck, played by Christopher Walken, his performance is the philanthropic businessman. I mean, at the time, I imagine it was some sort of Trump allusion, which is just funny that we have movies that do that, and obviously they wouldn't have known whatever was going to happen, but it was just like he was just a figure of old money and real estate, and like, so that's what Christopher Walken is kind of doing, where he's trying to pass down his legacy to his son Chip.
Right. Which is also where it seems like the love for his son comes from. More so than anything, the legacy rather than... I will say, like, he does...
Having the name on the building, like...
Yeah, because there is a scene where he, he sacrifices himself for his son.
Yeah.
And you think at first it's like, oh, that's kind of admirable.
That's a gesture,
But what it actually is probably, well, I need my company to keep going, and I'm the older one.
Yeah.
So I'll just let my son do it. Take me instead, you know?
Yes.
When you really analyze his character, he's probably not doing it for the most, positive reasons.
Right. Well, it's just funny how all of these characters are connected, because I mean, when you look at Shrek, I imagine Bruce sees like kind of like the hyper capitalist rich boy that like he might have been. Like he might have been Chip if his parents didn't die.
Right.
That kind of thing, right? And then at the same time he looks at Penguin and he sees someone who was also an orphan, right?
Yeah.
But he didn't have the benefit of the looks to blend into society, and that kind of in the same way that he has.
Right.
And then obviously he looks at Catwoman, who is someone who has had violence inflicted on her and is going out into the night to get revenge, the same way that happened to him just via his parents. So he's looking at all these different characters, and like it's kind of like a split psyche of like all three of them, and he kind of confronts all three of them in different ways. But the craziest thing is that it really does have empathy for like the downtrodden Catwoman, who is someone who is just kind of like a working class girl who was abused by her boss and then murdered by her boss. So it's a little bit more than abuse, we'll say.
That line that he has where he's just like, next time I'll push her out a higher window. I was like, whoa, damn, that's cold, bro.
Very cold.
God. He's just that character is just relentless. I almost feel like that's kind of why they had like the weird white hair that he has.
Yes.
It just almost adds like a coldness to it. I know it's a bit cliche and stupid, but I don't know what it is. Like he looks like a like soulless. You know what I mean? Like it looks like he has gray eyes.
Like when it gets to the end and they do that thing where they char his corpse, it's actually like, oh hey, it's not that. It makes sense actually. He's got the look.
For sure.
But I really like the detail where she's at work as his secretary, and then she goes home and she goes to her answering machine, and her mom's like, why don't you have a boyfriend yet? And then she goes to the next one, and it's like a perfume commercial about getting men, but also the commercial is a Shrek Industries perfume commercial. And they were like, it'll have your boss being like trying to assault you, and like that's the advertisement.
And I'm pretty sure she listens to that after he murders her, right?
Yes.
And then she has her awesome resurrection scene.
When she opens the door and it's like all silhouetted, and her hair is everywhere.
That darkness to the comedy is unreal. Like she's murdered, and then you get a fucking advertisement in your voicemail in your personal
where
home.
It's like wear perfume. Maybe your boss will assault you at work. You know?
Oh my god. Maybe your boss won't toss you out of a 50-story window.
And so she channels that violence that's been done to her, and sort of like the inherent like injustice of it, obviously, and her lack of kind of like agency in her life. Yeah. So she channels that into being Catwoman and finding a sense of empowerment through fantasy, both violent and very deeply sexual, obviously.
It seems like instead of having all filter. She just gets rid of it completely.
Yeah,
you know, that kind of thing.
She goes completely unhinged
Yeah.
and really likes fucking people up. She really
Yeah.
likes messing with Batman.
But also, kind of wants to turn them on before she does it.
Yeah, which is just, it's always so weird. You're watching it and you're just like you just see Catwoman like sensually stroking like his rubber abs.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
this is weird.
Yeah, it's getting to a
little
whole other
kinky,
spot.
honestly.
Yeah, this was definitely when I was thinking, why am I watching this when I was 10? and how did I not... like, I don't remember any of this horniness. You know what I mean? And it's so blatant. It's unreal.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, the whole movie is just horny as hell with the... that's the pussy I was looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
At one point, Penguin...
That's not even trying to be, like, subtle. You know what I mean?
No, like 3 seconds after saying that, Danny DeVito, in his just completely grotesque figure, grabs the scented lube by the bed.
Scented or unscented?
Yeah.
Oh my god. And then he even does, like, I'm pretty sure he, like, hops on the bed too. It almost has, like, a Burt Reynolds thing going on for a second. And just to see, like, Penguin's body shape have the Burt Reynolds and then the blackness coming out of his mouth, he's sweating. It's just... It's so gross.
Yeah, he's so clammy. He has stringy hair. He's shaped like a potato. He's got like a Hank Hill ass.
And even like...
you know what I'm talking about? The little tiny little...
yeah, like for such a big boy, it's like, where'd the butt go? And also that room itself, just like the emptiness of the attic, it's just one bed, a bird cage, and that's it. You know, like it's just such, like the setting there is just so sad and empty and oh my, like
yeah,
it's just,
I love that shot where he comes up the spiral staircase and it's a split diopter shot, but across, not from left to right, but from top to bottom of the frame, and it's her lying down across the bed in like a sensual position, and Penguin just like getting a little bit closer. He's like, oh, wow, what's going on here? Interesting.
It's such a scene.
But she
even ends up, and just like
she kind of flirts with him, or like it hypes him up a little bit.
What do you think of?
But mostly because again, she's using it as a manipulating tactic. Like she's like, everyone is always telling, you know, these women have to go after men, they have to be sexier, they have to do this, and instead she has decided to use it as a weapon to like get what she actually wants, and what she wants when she approaches him is to take down Batman, because Batman slighted her is the I think the main thing that happened, where she's just like, there can't be two like insane psychos trying to kill people out here. Because by the way, worth mentioning, this is one of the few and maybe the only Batman film where he's just a straight up murderer.
Oh, I was gonna mention that. Yeah, he blows a dude up and smiles about it.
Yeah.
Like real happy about it.
Like that's the thing that gets really interesting to me, is because she's obviously doing it because it's an empowerment fantasy where she feels powerful and she has strength and she can and she's inflicting violence, and it's like the violence is bad, and then I'm watching it and I'm looking at it and I'm like, she's really turned on by it in a way, and then I was like,
for sure.
And then but it doesn't let Batman off the hook, because every time he's being the shit out of people, that's the only time he ever smiles. That's the only time he's ever like, and people always get mad at the movie because it had Batman smiling under the cowl, which I guess looked silly to them. But I
well, now it's become, I mean, it has become that freeze frame meme. Yeah. Where it's just like him with the big smile right before he blows the guy up. But yeah, I found that interesting. I will say, as like a big fan of the Batman lore and stuff, it was a little bit odd. But with this movie, I think it's so forgivable, and so that's what I mean. Like, I couldn't be mad, because I'm like, this Batman doesn't feel like the Batman of the comics anyway. So like they're taking the basic archetypes of them and then just kind of putting his Tim Burton spin on it.
And some of the design work. And
yeah,
stuff like that,
and it's not to say it's like you can't have this movie without the Batman lore, because he is still grabbing from that, the loneliness, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was. I will say it was a bit odd to watch him laugh and then also blow a guy up just very happily. Yeah, there was another scene too. I'm trying to remember.
I think honestly
where he does
they just didn't want to put him on like a moral high ground, because it would make the drama like a little bit less. It would make it just more obvious. It would be like, he's got to stop the bad people, but it's more interesting when it's complicated by the fact that like he has the same thrills and pleasure that they do. Like every time Catwoman tries to come on to him, he's super psyched about it. He's like
stoked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like licking his little lips. He's got like little like lip moisturizer
And you're
on
not
and stuff
used
like
to like, yeah, you do feel like he could put out little bat chapstick and just start like, yeah, for real, man. And then they start. I really love how they start incorporating the relationship with Selina and Bruce, and then mixing that with the relationship with Catwoman and Batman. I mean, we've seen this before, but the way that they do it here is just really interesting. I love when I think they do a certain kiss, and it's the way that she grabs his hip, and he realizes that this could be Catwoman, and then they have this hilarious thing because most of the time it's Bruce that's trying to get out of the date and try to make up the excuse and go to Alfred and be like,
he's got another
Alfred,
life.
could you could you make something up so I could go be Batman and all that? And I love that this time around they had him do that, but then they had Selina also come up to Alfred and be like, I've got to go. Could you tell him that I'd do anything for him? I mean, don't say that, you know? And then I just love that they both had that, I've got to go because I'm living two separate lives.
Yeah, that's one of the most adult scenes in the movie, I think, because it's those two, you know, being the people they pretend to be, which is Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle. They're pretending to be those people. They're having a romantic evening. They feel like
they're being completely freed when they have the costume on.
Exactly.
It feels like themselves rather than an alter ego.
And they both don't know that they share that connection at the time.
And I don't think they know that that's their real selves and not their alter ego.
No, they don't know that yet either. Especially, they don't really know that until the end, I don't think, when they talk face to face in their costumes and stuff, and they know who each other are, and then they get more into that.
Yeah.
But that scene where they start making out on the couch, and earlier in the film, she stabbed him in the gut with one of her claws, and he burned her arm with like an acidic, some sort of chemical that he threw at her to like get her off of him.
Yeah.
And yeah, the shots that he chooses when like she's trying to like reach down and, you know, she's stroking his abs, and then he's like, oh, she's gonna touch my wound, and then he reaches her arm and she's like, he's gonna touch my acidic burn, and they're both like freaking out about it. And she has the great line when she goes to leave. She says, Alfred, can you tell him that he makes me feel like I hope I am?
Yeah,
and which is like a really vulnerable moment, and then she immediately undercuts it. Michelle Pfeiffer's so good. She immediately undercuts it and says, "No, that's bad. Do you know a dirty limerick?"
I love Alfred too. One has just come to mind.
Yeah,
it's just such a class act.
Because it really is these people who feel more alive and themselves and vulnerable, like being. Like these costumed characters,
and I also
that they
think
are playing.
Like that dirty limerick line too is almost like, because like you were saying, she's trying to be real at first, right?
Yeah.
And I think the sex, the horniness is almost a mask itself, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like to the real love that they're trying to connect with each other. What they end up doing is just kind of like just make it sex, you know, so that
two hot people.
Yeah. So we don't have to dive deeper and you know. Whatever it is, get into each other's lives and mess them up. Because they both know that they have these secret, separate lives.
But they don't want to tell each other, obviously.
Right. So it's interesting.
And then it weirdly enough, that ends up being kind of like what they're attracted to, probably.
Yeah.
Is that there's someone else out there. I mean, he even says, "You're like me. Don't you see? Like, don't you see?
Right.
This is why we were connected to each other.
Yeah.
We both have this thing." And I do like that she kind of counteracts that by being like, don't try to make this like a happy ending. Like, it's not a fairy tale. Like, I'd love to go live with you in your mansion, but that's like not the life of someone like me. Like, that's not like, that's, again, he's isolated and sheltered and cut off from everyone else. And he seems to think that that's normal, but everyone else is like, no, like, you have to interact with the world because the world is shitty.
Right.
And she's the one who actually makes the most moral case, which is like, this guy's clearly making the world shitty.
Yeah.
And you don't take him down. You're gonna you're gonna take him to jail. What, he's gonna get out. Yeah. He's gonna do this. Like, she's the one. I mean,
the only time he interacts with the world is when it's shitty too, though.
Yes.
Right? Like, it's like he never gets to see normal, everyday, just love and happiness or whatever.
The difference is that
when he goes out to connect with someone, he's going to kick their ass, basically.
Right. But and what she's arguing is that he's reacting to the symptoms. Like,
right.
She was like, me and Penguin are symptoms of a world that is troubled by more things than just a psycho and a rubber duck who's got penguin friends,
Right.
Or like me who likes to go out and like assault muggers, and like there are worse things out there that are causing this, and they are the character of Max Schreck, who is just constantly pursuing profit at the
Because he's just in the
expense of
background.
these people.
You know, he's basically just funding the whole thing. You know,
He's friends with the
pushing
mayor.
Penguin. You're right, right, exactly.
He's seen as a respected figure who I love his speech. Christopher Walken, just always fun to watch all the time. Anyway.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic.
But his speech that he gives at the beginning there, where he's just like, Santa Claus, maybe not. It's like, just want to make the world a better place.
You know? Yeah, it's great. I also love when he meets Penguin, and Penguin goes, "Yes, but you're a well-respected monster."
Yes,
it's like you have respect.
You have things that I want.
Yes, yeah,
exactly.
People like the way that you do evil things.
Well, and that's also interesting about Danny DeVito's character too. When he takes him and he brings him in, and he's trying to get him to see that power can be exercised in a way that's not through an underground network of circus people in the sewers.
Yeah.
He's like, that's power, sure, but there's another mode of power here at play that I'm welcoming you into and should have been yours at birth because your parents
because they were
rich. Yeah. So then so then it's getting into the whole thing of obviously the idea that should he have been powerful just because he was rich in the first place, and
right, because that's Max's entire reason, basically.
Right, and I love I love the way that he says it, where he's just like, you can reclaim your birthright, what your parents took from you.
Yeah,
and that is actually what makes him go, yes. And what did he say? He goes, fine, I'll be mayor. Well, they've got him in the giant office with the giant Oswald for mayor posters. Oswald will clean up the city. When he does that big speech in front of everyone outside, where it's so funny, because Danny DeVito's obviously, he's like 4'10" or something. He's like 4. He's really tiny. He's
made for this role.
and they have all the microphones in his face. They're like, you can't even see him because he's so short. And he's giving his giant speech to everyone out front, where, and the design, it looks like fucking Citizen Kane. Like when he's giving his speech, and it's got the big thing behind him, and like you look to the side, it's got like this giant brass dude like holding a boulder. It's massive.
Yeah.
The design work in this film, I gotta say, like, it really is just what sends it over the top for me. It's just like, on top of this like really awesome story that is, you know, in part about trauma and obviously the identity of these people who have dual identities, and isolation and loneliness and power and all of this. It is really ultimately also just an aesthetic vision, a more extreme aesthetic vision than I think I've ever seen someone impose on like a studio product that they didn't write.
Yeah.
Like this is like he just jumped in and was like, yeah, I'll hire my screenwriter, we'll see what he makes, and then from there I'm just gonna do whatever the fuck I want. Like it is so expressive to the point of it actually is like a psychotic movie about these psychotic characters. I really liked the way that Letterboxd user Matt Lynch described the film, where he said that ultimately it was 3 cosplaying homicidal psychotics driven insane by a pulpy combination of sexual desire, emotional trauma, and socioeconomic anxiety wage open armed conflict in a major metropolitan area. This was bankrolled by a major studio and released to an eager public.
Yeah. And it did really well, didn't it?
And I don't think it did as well as the first one, and it was definitely, we will say, critically, and I don't know that it did poorly, but we'll say in terms of subject matter, it was alienating enough that Warner Brothers quietly said, Tim Burton, please don't come back for another one, after they tried really hard to get him for the second one.
Well, that's a bummer, because, I mean, I do...
It would have been nice to see him close out a trilogy.
There's a place in my heart for the other two that were not done by Tim. But,
the Joel Schumacher ones?
Yeah. Are they both Schumachers?
I think they're both Schumachers.
Okay.
Batman Forever and Batman and Robin.
They're just like...
Which, by the way, Batman...
but I would have preferred Tim to do more.
Yeah, Batman and Robin actually stole a climax idea that they came up while making this film.
Oh, really?
Just one idea that they threw around was this idea of Penguin freezing the world. the way that Mr. Freeze tries to.
Oh, okay.
So they actually ended up recycling some of the ideas that they came up with for this film for later films,
nice.
including Robin. At one point they tried to fit Robin into this, but they were like, it doesn't work with it.
It's too much.
Well, they were like, it doesn't work with the loneliness angle. They were like, the loneliness angle was really important on all these fronts because all of these characters in their own way are just extremely like emotionally stunted because of a lack of interaction with people and because of their isolation. He was like, that's just such a fundamental part of this story. And I mean, also it's part of what Tim Burton likes to do in a lot of his stories. He likes to explore the pain of like weirdos and freaks and like how they choose to channel that, how they affect each other, the humanity of the weirder people.
Penguin gets one of my favorite lines, and it was he was like, "You're just jealous because I'm a genuine freak and you have to wear a mask."
Yes,
and I'm like,
one of the
fuck yeah, and I put it on my letterbox. I was like, "This is my reply to anyone that wears a metal T-shirt and doesn't listen to the band or the genre.
He's the real
We
deal.
all know that you're fake, all right? And I'm a genuine freak."
Yeah, so that's Batman in this movie. Batman is a tryhard.
I love that line. Exactly. Batman's a friggin' tryhard. You wish you shopped at Hot Topic when you were a teenager, Batman.
Yeah, so maybe pivoting towards the reductive rating round here. For me, I gotta say, this does really get this gets the 5 for me. I think that this is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it is.
The fact that this was a major blockbuster of 1992, a children's movie that is actually just a gothic expressionist, like psychosexual, like operatic tragedy. I didn't even get to talk about Danny Elfman's score.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Which is,
I mean, Elfman in general has such a like. He's weird because he can do very creepy things, but there's always like an upbeat rhythm to them. It's always very fast paced and
it's almost
driven.
Whimsical sometimes.
Yeah. No, that'd be a perfect word for it. Like even when he's doing really gothic strings and stuff like that, there is a very whimsical kind of element to his scores. He's unreal. He really is.
That's what I like about it because it's as lyrical and like bombastic a score as like Danny Elfman has
helps
probably
with the
ever
wacky
conceived.
Gadgets and stuff too, right?
And the designs and like how just unrealistic
it makes it more
all is.
believable because a lot of the stuff they're showing you visually can be pretty fucking out there.
Yeah.
Like some of the gadgets they do, like one where Batman's Batmobile has just like a little like a cylinder that comes out at the middle so he can do U-turns. Like it's so random and it's so wacky. But honestly, the help of Elfman's score really makes it believable. Because it definitely helps. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because I would just say that like. It's really operatic, but it's also still somehow like mournful and melancholy.
Yeah.
Because even when the movie is like exciting, like some of the action scenes and stuff like that, where Batman's beating the shit out of people or driving the Batmobile around, it's exciting because of this really bizarre fetish for power and control that all these characters have.
Yeah.
Like the score's almost like ghostly as the camera like moves through like the frozen concrete wasteland that is like Gotham's underbelly, which is populated by just like these really idiosyncratic, like odd people who he really gets into like the political reality of. It's almost a political satire when it gets to the point where they have him running for mayor and stuff like that.
Oh, it definitely is, yeah.
How it's mostly all just a front for Max Schreck to get a surplus of power.
Yeah.
Like just like not even just like actual power, just like energy. Like that's his plan is he's just like, I want more people to have to buy more energy from me. Yeah. That's his whole big thing.
Now I'm assuming you do because it's a 5. But I was just curious as to like some of the puns get pretty eye rolly, not in a bad way. I don't think.
Eat floor.
Like eat floor. She falls into sand and she's like, kitty litter. You know that kind of stuff.
No,
there's one point where she's on the end of her bed.
All part of the performative stuff for
sure,
me.
For
I love it.
When she's on the bed and she starts licking her suit and then cleaning herself like an actual cat. And then the scene cuts. That's how the scene cuts. So it's just like, there were certain things I totally got 100%. Yeah. Some of the stuff, although I do love it, I still can almost see why someone would be like, that's a little too much. You know what I mean? I mean, I know that you love it.
Yeah.
But do you at least see that kind of a perspective, or do you think it just works? God damn it.
Well, I honestly think
Because it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I just see how it could.
like it's corny.
Yeah, it is corny. I mean, it's undeniably corny,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of love to it, like...
Yeah, I mean, that's why it doesn't bother me, just because because for me, as soon as we get into those scenes, which do feel like the obligatory Batman has to punch someone and have a one-liner kind of thing, which is what it is probably for Warner Brothers.
Sure,
For me, it's all just of a piece with these people who, like, they're trying so hard to be like this.
Oh, yeah.
Like they're, like, again, like they feel so
They're
alive.
putting on the character, in a sense.
Yes,
and just
and
wholeheartedly.
that's why when him and Catwoman do it to each other,
yeah, I like
there's
that.
almost like a push and pull back and forth with them, where like they're clearly performing at each other, but then also they're hyping each other up at the same time, because like they're like, here's someone who is like me, who makes me feel alive, who actually tests me in their own weird way.
No, you're right.
And then all of a sudden,
that makes me like it.
You pull back the mask,
More.
and all of a sudden, these people are like, "Wow, we are just like lonely weirdos who like to go out at night and kill people and get horny about it and have like this weird rubber leather kink."
Yeah.
She even has like a whip. It's like BDSM shit.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
She has that line too where she's just she talks about the security guards who are she's like confusing your pistols with your privates while she's like whipping it out of their hands and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're right.
So
it totally works.
So I do think that like the cartoonier elements of them playing dress up is like part of what the text of the movie is that these people are playing dress up as a way to kind of mask their pain. But the movie, once they take them off, explores the tragedy of how these are individuals who are really just nothing when they get matched up against like the actual powers that be, like the actual money and politics behind it all. I mean, I love Shrek's line where he's like, "It's Christmas, give the Constitution a rest." That's one of the big lines that he has, because he has power both in terms of like capital and financial power, obviously. And then Bruce and the Cobblepots come from money, but obviously it's also power in terms of, the gendered violence that Selina gets, and obviously Penguin's parents trying to kill him. Being
as a baby,
being forced into orphanage, which is kind of like the opposite of Bruce's. Kind of like the darker opposite there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I really do think that. I mean, I especially the ending of this film where they have the symmetrical shot of Bruce going into the dark alleyway. Finally, he's left his mansion and he's going out and doing things, and he picks up the stray cat, who is Selina's previous stray cat, and he does it in the mirrored shot of the silhouette where she comes home and greets the cat in her opening scene that she has, and he says, "Merry Christmas, Alfred, and goodwill toward men and women." So it's a total feel-bad Christmas movie about just lonely psychopaths.
Because they all end up alone. Every one of them. Or dead.
Yeah, alone or dead.
Merry Christmas.
They are just like lonely, murderous psychos that somehow you believe that emotional pain while also going to absurd places like Danny DeVito in a onesie and a fur coat and a top hat inside of a giant rubber duck that is also a car.
I was going to say, that baby goes on road too.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also got rocket strapped to their back doing kamikaze shit.
I got to say, that scene, just iconic. When Danny DeVito is riling up the troops. And when I say troops, what I mean is penguins with rocket attached to their backs.
Yep.
Just that's art right there.
Just an unbelievable shot, and in front of his sewer circus clowns.
Yeah.
And his monkey and the dog and like all these different things. I love
too when he says, "But I'm gonna give it a 4." By the way, it's so close to the 5. I know. But it's so close, and this time around,
it's closest it's ever been.
I almost guarantee it's gonna get there. But one scene I just wanted to mention before we wrap it up was. I love when he mentions that they're gonna slaughter all of the firstborn children, and then
so biblical,
and then biblical, and then the one clown is even like, we might be going a little too far, and then he just shoots him dead. Like I just love that Penguin at one point went so far that is like his army was like, I can't get behind you on that one, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fantastic film.
Yeah, so despite the fact that he's doing biblical violence and that he's covered in prosthetics and makeup, somehow Danny DeVito locates soul of an abused and abandoned boy raised by animals in a sewer.
Yeah.
And you just think about that and you're like, how is that even possible?
How did he pull it off?
It's unbelievable. Also
It really
worth noting
is.
that I think that this is the only comic book movie outside of that really took Watchmen, the original comics idea of being turned on by the leather and the thrill of the violence and stuff of that from Watchmen. I was like, man, Tim Burton.
That's true.
Somehow he got it. Oh, and before we go, one line we didn't mention that I have written down here that we definitely had to hit. Sickos never scare me, at least they're committed.
Hell yeah.
Which is obviously a great double wording because either they are committed as in institutionalized or they are committed to their bit.
Definitely one of the stronger puns.
Yes.
Oh man, yeah, fucking fantastic. And I just the last note, I did not remember all the horniness. My God. This movie is just
so horny. Penguin wants to fuck
movie.
Catwoman. Catwoman wants to fuck Batman.
Yeah.
Batman kind of wants to fuck everybody.
Yeah, I think so.
Kind of
all of Gotham, really.
Yeah, he's there.
He doesn't want to just save the city.
But yeah, that will lead us into our discussion on another feel bad Christmas movie.
Yeah.
That is both a psychodrama that is melancholic and layered also with kink.
This is if Bruce Wayne never became Batman.
Yes. Yes. It is a film that matches Batman Returns' bizarre levels of gender politics and horniness and anxieties about power and money during the Christmas holidays. The only other film I can think of in existence that does this, and that is Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, which we are going to be talking about next year.
Let's do it.
What's the big mystery?
I have seen one or two things in my life, but never anything like this.
You know there is no way on Earth you're going to leave here tonight without taking me with you.
We are back, and we are talking Eyes Wide Shut, the 1999. Listen to this. This is what Wikipedia says. Erotic mystery psychological drama film.
Interesting.
That's a lot of genres.
Yes,
that's
it is.
4 genres. Directed, produced, and co-written by one Stanley Kubrick. Maybe you've heard of this man.
Maybe.
It's also based on a 1926... True events for sure, but also a 1926 novella called Dream Story.
Okay.
So he took the story from the 1920s and he adapted it to, it took place in Vienna in the 1920s, and he adapted it to be in New York City 1990s. And believe it or not, the basic plot is actually pretty much the same.
Really?
Other than some American-specific aspects, a lot of the scenes that you watch, including like he has to go to a costume party, and the guy who's doing the costume might be pimping out his daughter. Like, all of that stuff is from the book.
Wow.
Yeah, I went through I haven't read the book, but I went through and I looked at the summary of the book, and I was like, wow, most of these scenes made it into the movie.
What about the whole, like, ritual stuff? Like the mansion stuff?
Not, it's there, but it's not, obviously it's not directed and extended by Stanley Kubrick to be, like, insanely horrifying.
Yeah,
so it's not quite...
Because it is.
I would say there is a tone here, and a sustained tone here, that differentiates and recontextualizes some of the events of the book into something a little bit scarier than the book was. The book seemed more like a guy who becomes kind of shocked by this idea of his wife having a fantasy, or both of them. Actually, in the book, it's actually both of them have fantasies. And
they tell each other?
They tell each other,
okay.
Yes. I think her fantasy is the one that she says in the movie, and then his fantasy is about an underage girl.
Okay, basically what they wanted to do, what Kubrick did was like, we're gonna take it so that that Cruise takes on the character of more like he's almost lying about it, right? He wants to hold it back.
He's repressed.
Yeah,
yes.
right.
Which Cruise, to be fair to him, he plays extremely well.
Oh yeah,
very out of character for him.
To me, it almost felt like watching this. It was like Cruise didn't
admitting
get the
something.
Subtext. yeah. Like I feel like he understood what was generally happening and all that, but I honestly don't know if he was aware of how I don't know how I don't know what the word is. It's like the way that he analyzes his character is not very positive at all. Even though he's constantly putting on this very charming persona, and he's also doing this stuff where, okay, for one scene, this will be a perfect example of what I'm trying to say. The scene where he goes to the hooker, right?
Yeah.
And then he basically almost goes through with it.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't, but he gives her the money anyway. And I feel like he thinks that that's just such a good gesture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, not the fact that he was there in the first place
Yeah.
to do what he was going to do.
That he had the fantasy, yeah.
But just that he didn't go through with it, and he paid her anyway. I'm a good guy. That's kind of like the whole thing I got.
Which
from
is a
that.
weird thing too, because you can see that Nicole Kidman, she admits her fantasy that she had about obviously having an affair with a naval officer. That she was at the time she was so horny that she was willing to give up her entire family for it,
right?
Just for one night with this naval officer,
right. Which is a devastating thing to hear from your girlfriend, of course.
Your wife, I'm
or
pretty
your
sure.
wife. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, your wife.
Yeah,
with a child.
And she tells that to him. But what's interesting about that is she tells him, "I didn't go through with it, and when I went downstairs and saw that he was gone, I was relieved that I didn't have that desire anymore."
Yeah.
And that she was telling him that I'm horrified more by just my own desire, and not even
that she thought that way.
Yeah, that she was like, there's something inside of me that made me feel that way. And after it was over, I looked at it and I felt bad about it, but there's something there. There's something not accounted for in this life that we have.
She felt like, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was almost like a duality where she was in both places.
Yeah.
Right? Where it was like, I want the fantasy to happen, but I so badly do not want that fantasy to happen.
Because she knows that it would shatter everything else.
Right.
And her admitting this actually is what triggers his shattering. I mean, throughout the rest of the movie after that, he keeps visualizing her fantasy in like this like extreme blue, like reduced frame rate footage of her just getting railed by a dude in a
naval guy. I think?
Yeah,
some guy from the Navy.
Some dude in a naval officer uniform. And
going to town.
And every time it cuts to that, and then it cuts back to his face, and he's just being like, ugh.
Just blank, just so like distraught.
Yeah, every time it's so funny. This movie's actually a lot funnier than I remembered it being. I mean, like it's pretty grim and stuff, but
I know
like
what you mean.
Like it almost has like this sense of you're watching a character in that way that the Coens can sometimes be funny. You're watching them trapped in like a structure or a machine, and you're kind of like you're watching them just react to it.
Yeah, I do think like
because Tom Cruise goes on like an odyssey in this film.
Yeah, it's his like sexual fantasy odyssey essentially.
Yeah, where he's like she cheated on me in her head, so now I'm gonna cheat on her in my head is kind of like his
right.
thing.
Then that's what's interesting is he goes out to maybe do it, but it also seems like the whole time he's just kind of spectating. Like you do have a sense that he might go through with it, but for the most part, I did kind of.
There is a distance from him, but see, I think that's just Kubrick. I think Kubrick as a guy, he's a very distant style filmmaker, and like other than those brief glimpses into what he's imagining her fantasy is, there's not a lot of subjectivity to this film. It's a lot of like matter. Again, same way we talked about when we did the Shining episode. How I said the thing that was kind of really stood out to me about that film on rewatch was this idea that he took the hotel and he filmed it as this matter-of-fact thing, and the horror kind of comes from his own like style and structure. It's not from this really decrepit-looking hotel with this really angular lighting that makes it look so creepy. Like a lot of this is very just him walking through.
Yeah, it is matter of fact.
Like an apartment, or walking through some sort of mansion, or walking through these spaces, and the steady cam just kind of following him. They even took that as far as with the lighting, which they said that every chance they could, they didn't use any lighting. They just took the lighting of, that's why they put it at Christmas time. Yeah. They wanted the lighting of the Christmas lights, of the Christmas trees, of just the neon on the streets, and they wanted that to just be so it's where like the style came from.
It's like there's a darkness to it because it's mostly at nighttime. Yeah. But then you also have that, you know, the big neon lights and all that. So there's this balance of darkness and then maybe like a hint of light trying to come out of that all, you know.
Yeah, but that's just what I mean when it doesn't, like, this is somehow a movie that feels surreal while not actually taking on any surrealist style, like in the way that, say, Tim Burton would. Tim Burton would go insane. He would design the buildings to look crazy. He would he would make it a design challenge. Yeah. He would go to the German expressionist guys and be like, how do I capture this headspace using the sets and the lighting and this? And Kubrick just never doesn't think to do that, which leads you to this kind of thing where you're just watching a guy walk around a lot and have these bizarre, detailed interactions where, like, everything is transactional. One thing I noted looking up for research for this one was that apparently he told his co-writer that when they were doing dialogue, he didn't want any flowery like wordplay or wit in the dialogue. He was like, I want this to be purely terse, transactional conversations of, like, people just trading information or trading
money for bodies.
Yes, I mean, I love that. I think it's really indicative, that one line where the girl invites him upstairs. There's not a whole lot of indication that, like, she's really I mean, like, obviously she approaches him and she's like, you want to have a good time and all of that, but there's she hasn't come out and said, I'm a prostitute. And then he goes, first thing he does, he goes, so should we talk about money? That's like the first thing that comes out of his mouth when they're sitting there after making, like, you know, meaningless small talk and that kind of stuff.
And it does seem like she was trying to elongate it a little bit more, like almost trying to make it part of the fantasy where it was almost real, whereas he was just straight down to the business. You know, like, this is why I'm here. And he does that throughout the film. Like, it seems like anytime, you know, he has a problem that occurs, it's like, the mask isn't here. He's like, oh, just put it on the bill. You know, like, he that's pretty much how he gets away with all the things that he can do, is just because he has the money to make the transaction. Same thing when he goes to the mansion and he has to convince the cab driver to stay there. He just has hundreds of dollars just ready to go. Yep. None of these things that he does would be available to any normal person.
No. 100%.
I mean, maybe a little bit at the beginning because he's just kind of dealing with, like, more like the street life and stuff like that.
Right.
But eventually, it is odd that he's the only one that could get there. But then when he gets there, he's even like, oh shit, this is more than I thought we had as a class of people. You know what I mean? It was like, I thought I was accessible to all these things. There's a whole other fucking tier.
Yes. Well, because, you know? I mean, and the thing that about that is because, yes, he's very upper middle class. Right. He's very, like, he's being welcomed into the barest level of, like, the basics. He gets invited to the Christmas party, right? Which is where the movie opens, and they spend
talks to the models, you know.
Yeah, and they say, do you want to see where the rainbow ends? Which by the time you get to the end of the movie, that line just takes on, like, a quality where you're like, I don't think I want to know where the rainbow. especially when he obviously makes the connection where, you know, you have these two gorgeous women say, you know, come with us, see where the rainbow ends, and then we have about, like, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour later where he goes to the costume store and what's on the front, but it's called, like, rainbow or whatever, right? Yeah, rainbow.
So just to connect those things, it always feels like every location he goes to is somehow connected, even though it's not shown to you completely.
Yes.
You know? Like, there's even a part where we were talking about the guy that's pimping out his daughter. There's one subtle line where one of the more powerful men, I think it might be the guy he talks to at the end, and he says that they know of that man. Like, they know of the costume designer guy, or the guy that rents it out. So what I assumed that meant is that they also probably know about the daughter and all that stuff. And it's just, as the film goes, you realize that even at these top tiers, it's kind of still connected to everything below it too.
Yes.
Right? And it's just like it's horrific. It's a fucking nightmare.
Oh,
like,
no.
This movie scares the shit out of me, man, on a deep core level. I'm a bit like, I like conspiracy theory shit, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not like I wholeheartedly believe in it, but like there's something about this movie that just gets my brain ticking, you know? It's truly horrifying.
Well, it is about confronting, you know, something sort of like illusory, like confronting the fact that this thing that your whole life you've seen it. I mean, it comes back to the title, Eyes Wide Shut. It's like, you know, you're not seeing what's really there.
Yeah, it's there, but
Yeah.
you're just, you know, it's and it's something that we've been kind of dealing with, I guess, even on a real life scale right now, which is with like Epstein and all that, you know.
Yep.
And it's kind of that thing where you heard the stories years ago, but it's just now it's coming to light, you know. It's this movie gives me that vibe where it's just there's these things that are there, we're probably aware of them, but we're just gonna look away.
The financial elite
Yes.
kind of build their own world. Well, in fact,
Seems
they
so.
they obviously have control of building the world that you also see.
Yep.
But this is what I mean when I talk about this idea of like confronting the illusory, because I think one of the most like overt scenes that get at this is honestly the opening scene where they're invited to the Christmas party, and they view this idea of their marriage as kind of like a socializing act almost.
Yeah.
Like neither of them seem like they seem to like each other.
Oh,
But
for
like,
sure.
And they do have like probably the one moment in this film, which by the way, marketed as an erotic thriller, people were obviously going to be disappointed because that's not really what it is. The only scene that's like maybe erotic is like the scene where Nicole Kidman is stripping in front of the mirror and Tom Cruise joins her.
Right.
That's basically it. Everything after that, the nudity
You would
is really
argue it's
repulsive.
like horror.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying.
Like, to be fair, the most explicitly
Because I'm like, that
nude
mansion
secret-
scene, although I wouldn't, you know, it's not the type of eroticism I would go for. I would still argue it's erotic, you know.
Yes, but I would just say it's more like cold and impersonal by the time you hit there. Like
sure.
like it's definitely not. It's not designed to be super sexy.
Right. I mean, even that, like the scene itself, it's almost as if, and I never realized it the first time I watched it because I think I was just so fucking shocked at what I was watching. I couldn't believe it. But this time around, I started to just kind of look at details and see like what people were doing around the action. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like all they were doing was just standing there, completely still, completely silent, almost as if they're watching like an art exhibit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
With the really creepy masks on.
it completely gets rid of
Really
any of the like
inhuman masks.
intimacy or anything like that. Right? Yeah, that too.
Yeah, they're kissing each other on like these really gross masks. Like I mean
Yeah.
that mask that looks like a penguin nose, but it's also like a scythe.
Yeah, there's things that even don't make sense, like sexually, and it's like, I mean, this is a little explicit, but like you see girls going down on each other, and they're doing it with the masks on. So I'm sure they're not doing a great job, and it's just I just found that fascinating. It was kind of just adding to the whole thing where it's almost like a superficial thing. Like
Yeah.
it's just
It's another performance thing again,
right? It's
yeah.
performance, and that adds to the horror. To be honest, it's like you can't have any intimacy.
I really
you know?
liked the guy in The Giant, because I mean, obviously we're referring to the really famous sequence in this
Yeah.
where Tom Cruise, wandering through the night, finds himself at a party for the richest people in town. He got the code word from a guy that he used to know in medical school who plays piano blindfolded at this event because it's super secret. And he finds out why it's super secret because all the rich people wear these really creepy masks and just fuck the shit out of each other in these really bizarre ways. And my favorite way that someone does it in this movie is the one guy who is just acting as a table for the other couple.
Oh yeah.
He's on his hands and knees and he's lifting up the girl so that she's lying on his back as if she was lying on a table.
Yeah.
While a guy is pounding her.
It's like crazy.
And I'm like, there's no way the guy being the table is getting anything out of this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where your brain starts to go, well, then why? Because the thing is, too, is he's rich.
It's so they all have something on each other.
Right.
They can all blackmail each other.
Yeah. Epstein.
Yeah.
It's absolutely just insane, because that's the thing. Like, you think, you know, there are these rich, powerful men that are getting like hookers or whatever, and they're having these giant orgies, I guess. But then when you start to analyze it like that, you're like, well, why is he there? He came to this secret party as this billionaire to make himself a table for two other people to have sex on him. It's just like,
Yeah, no, it's almost scary.
you know, that's what I mean. I think that type of like, it's so bizarre that you can't understand it. So it just adds to the horror element of it. You know, you just kind of get scared. You're like, what does this mean? And yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting because Tom Cruise discovers this because he is trying to activate his own base desire, because he was confronted with his wife's. And he's just like, I don't have that because I'm a normal person. Normal people don't have that. And then he starts activating it in himself. He starts going from place to place, and he's like, actually is weirdly attracted. And even though he's sort of like questioning it, he is all the time. He's like, I probably would have had sex with that hooker. I was sort of fascinated by whatever those two Japanese men were doing with the little child and the food.
There's that really creepy part where she whispers in Tom's ear before she leaves, and you don't hear what she says, and you never get to hear what she says.
Yeah.
But she looks back and gives this like look to him, and Tom, just his reaction is, it is disgusted, but it almost feels
intrigued
like it could
too,
be,
though. Yeah,
it could be like that disgust is almost coming from himself, where he's like, I don't want to even be remotely intrigued by this, and now I am, and I got to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
you know. Like,
meanwhile, he's buying a costume to go to the party where he's gonna see and he's like, okay, this. And even then, what's funny is he's disgusted by it, like after the fact.
Yeah.
But while he's there, he's walking around. He's watching.
Yep.
He's everyone's being like, dude, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I kind of want to see some more.
I kind of want to see this. Sorry, I'll take the risk. Yeah, he gets like 3 warnings from one of the girls where she's just like, dude, you got to go. They're gonna kill us.
You are in danger.
Yeah, like they will hurt you.
Yeah. I know that you don't belong here. And yeah, he just keeps wandering around while this kind of like really bare, like hypnotic, like piano score is going.
God. That's a terrifying score.
Yeah.
It's like 3 notes.
Yeah.
But it's just so hard hitting every single time. I think it's just like he hits the keys as hard as he can every time.
Yeah, he gets them to like shriek. Yeah.
No, oh my God, the crescendo every time they imply something to be scared of or whatever. That score really adds. It's unreal, and it's so bare bones. Like there's almost nothing to it.
Yeah.
You know? And I think it's one of like the only real scores throughout the whole thing.
Yeah,
like,
there's some
most
needle
memorable.
drops, and there's some classical music, and that's basically it.
Yeah. One, I will say, the drone like choir or the violins or whatever that the guy's playing during the ritual scene.
Yeah.
That shit is good. Dark, but oh man, that's some scary stuff.
Yeah, and sometimes
really good score there.
And sometimes, you know, they just got to do it while they got naked ladies wearing robes and masks and doing weird body positions and like walking around like birds and shit.
Yeah, it's the craziest shit, dude. Oh man!
So you peel back the
Rich
mask,
people.
and that's what's actually there. And he's intrigued, and then he's terrified. It's a really conflicted reaction that Tom Cruise has to it because what
he's horrified but cannot stop.
Because what he's realized is what he realizes over the course of this movie, which is, you know, hammered home by the first scene of the film, where you can tell that he and his wife are both performing like this perfect marriage at this party, even though both of them are being, you know, hit on by different people at the party. Like Nicole Kidman has like the Hungarian oligarch or whoever is there, who's there trying to get her to go home. He's got the model going after him.
Yeah, that reminded me of just going back to that scene between Kidman and Tom when she asks him,
did you
it's like,
fuck
if
those?
you and if you weren't married, would you do that? And he kind of like refuses to answer. And what I find interesting is she gets mad at him, and the first time I watched this, I thought it was just like she was getting mad at him because, you know, she thinks that that's what he thinks or whatever it is. And what I realized is I think it's just because he won't admit it.
Yeah.
Right? Because she does the same thing. The only reason that she didn't sleep with that older gentleman was because she's married. She even says that at the end of the scenes.
Yeah.
So you could think like, oh, she's being a hypocrite, but in reality, all she's doing is trying to get
really
the truth from Tom. That's all it is.
Right, because
and if he did, he wouldn't have had to go on this fucking odyssey that he went on.
Yeah, because she went through the same experience where she said, no, the societal norm that I've agreed to, which is that I'm married and I am faithful to my husband. And so when he just straight up says, no, I wasn't even attracted to those girls.
Right.
And
It's
she's
like,
just
you're a
like,
liar.
fuck you. I was attracted to the Hungarian guy.
Yeah.
So I know that you're just denying, you're repressing something.
Right.
You are putting on this performance of this really great doctor. And I love how she also, which I think is one of the main like thesis points of the film, is when she talks about this idea of, do you get horny with your patients? Because like that's just pure Kubrick. He has such a clinical style. Like if he was in any other profession, he would have been a doctor.
Go over, right? Like that's that thing. It's that philosophical question of the right and wrong of our sexuality and stuff like that.
Well, and
right?
that's the idea of you're looking at someone's, like you're looking at someone's anatomy, I guess, or you're looking at someone's private parts. And you're doing so professionally, and she's saying, but you are a person, like in a professional, societally accepted way. Obviously, you can say, well, of course not.
Yeah.
But she's just like, there is a base primal thing in there, and
like,
if you
I
don't
know
have
it's
it,
there,
then you're really the freak.
Yeah.
So his whole journey is him awakening that part of himself that he has really repressed. It's this, and it's implied. It's that we've built all of this stuff around us over top of it, where it's just like we can create these structures, we can create these societal norms and these communities and all of this. We can create all of these things that have some moral judgment, we'll say, and agree to them. But she was just like, we are contradicting them all the time. And Nicole Kidman is just the person who will freely admit that to him because she's being honest with him. And she wants him to know who she really is. And I love when he can't contradict that anymore. Like that scene where he looks at her doing her normal mom domestic rituals, like teaching their daughter math, and all he can hear is her talking about her dream where she was being fucked
even though
by
she's
like
doing
100 people or 100 men, and she was just like, I had a dream where I was cuckolding you and it was horrible. But when he actually,
she even is like, and what's crazy too is that she admits that she hated it. Yeah, and that she's crying, she's weeping.
But
for
in the
guilt.
dream, she's laughing.
Right.
Like in her sleep, she's actually laughing.
That's true. That's a good...
which really throws him off, too.
Definitely. I was also going to mention the... just because we were talking about that doctor thing, I love that she flips it on him, too, where at first he says, like, no, I would never... Like, it's a patient. I don't do that. And she goes, okay, well, I'm sure the reason that you're thinking that is because you have to be professional. Do you think that the patients never have fantasies themselves?
Oh,
and he's never even thought of that, right? Like, he's only thinking about himself, his own thing. Just stay the line. Don't be turned on right now.
He knows the talking points. That's the thing. And to be fair, he's right.
Like, I'm flipping that on you now. It's like, well, what do you think about maybe a patient that you touched thought about you? Yeah. And he's just like, that's no. Like, you're trapping me in a corner. Oh man!
Because the thing is everything he's saying is technically what he's supposed to be saying. Right.
Exactly.
Like that's why you watch that fight, and it is sort of like it feels like Nicole Kidman is picking the fight with him.
Yep.
But everything she's saying is just trying to get him to be honest.
Yes.
About all of the things.
Because I'll admit, the first time I watched it, I wasn't quite sure. I'm like, yo, you're
going off.
You smoked a little too much weed, and you just need to calm down.
Tom Cruise's delivery of that line is an all-timer, where he's like, "This pot is making you aggressive."
That is good.
The way he's got it, he lifts his hand up and everything. It's so good. He really nails the delivery.
I love
on that
his
line.
fucking performance in this movie.
This is one of those rare Tom Cruise performances, and he is one of the few like A-grade movie stars who will do something like this, where he might not even know it, but he kind of does look like an idiot when he takes roles like this. But he did it in like Edge of Tomorrow too, which is one where he's kind of plays a coward who dies over and over again.
Yeah,
and it's played for slapstick.
Yeah,
it's just the kind of role that like obviously
that one I felt like he was more aware of, though. I will say.
Yes.
Like this one, I feel like he wasn't quite
Kubrick
sure.
was using him a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Well, that's because a lot of like the actual, weirdly enough, like
it's like those two,
the
even like
text and
Kidman, they
thematics-
were Hollywood royalty, right?
Yes.
So I think he chose them on purposely in that regard. You know?
Yeah, to subvert what people would expect from them.
Yeah. I mean, Tom Cruise has probably been to one of those parties.
What is it, Scientology? Yeah,
Yeah. He's like the Jesus Christ of Scientology. He's definitely been to one of those parties.
But I was gonna point out, and I wasn't sure if you knew this. This is part of what I was mentioning at the top of the show. How there was this idea of what they had to do and why this movie was so expensive. And to me, it commingles with this idea of this fakeness, of this idea of like there is a societal norm where they are a picture perfect marriage, but really there are base desires under there that they keep repressing, and society has sort of done the same, or at least the powerful have masked themselves very, very well. And part of that is you kind of feel just a sense of fakeness in this movie, and part of that. Is because none of this was shot in the United States. This takes place in New York. This is an entirely set New York.
Wow.
Because one, Kubrick's, he's just afraid of flying. He didn't want to go to the US. But he wanted his movie to take place in New York. So they used Pinewood Studios, one of the biggest movie studios in the UK. And they built, and it is on record that he sent people to New York, and he would have them send him photos and measurements of everything. Like they would measure city blocks. They would measure where the imperfections were. And then he would say, you have to replicate that shit here.
So all those
city
shots.
streets, all set.
Wow.
So if you're ever, and some of them you can
they
tell.
They look huge,
and
too.
some of them you can tell because
they have blocks. Like you can see the blocks.
Yep, all set, baby.
That's fucking crazy.
And they even he even took some footage, had people film some second unit footage in New York, and then rear projected it behind it, some of the sets and behind Tom Cruise. So there are stuff where you see where Tom Cruise is walking, and it's just like a rear projection.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
Yeah,
it does add a bit of an effect, though. I think. Like,
it does.
It's almost one of those
because again,
things that you know, once you know after the fact, you're like, oh, it just kind of swarms. You know,
it was like that bit I told you in Carrie where you don't realize it while you're watching that dream sequence, but he filmed it all in reverse.
Exactly, and I didn't notice that. I remember that, and it did. It's weird that it can make a click right there in your brain like that.
Yeah, so it's totally uncanny, which really does lend itself to this kind of like dreamscape vibe that he's building, which again, he's not doing
artificial.
He's not doing it by doing this, heavily surrealist abstract filmmaking of any kind.
No.
He's just somehow he makes you feel that way just through his own techniques like this and creating this kind of fakeness. And the same thing goes with, again, he's making these fake sets, but then he's lighting them with real lights and not using the fake set lights on them at all. They even said when they didn't have enough light, they just brought like more of those like Chinese lantern bulb lights and stuff. Yeah. Like he was like, those were the things they used for lighting when they did them, because they really wanted this artificial glow of Christmas, because it's really important this takes place at Christmas. Same with Batman Returns, actually. We didn't talk a whole lot about how it fits into the holiday stuff, but what is Christmas if not just like this generally societally agreed upon norm of this fake bright thing where we all agree that everything is going to be good and happy. And it's also, the spirit of good faith and family and charity. But meanwhile, as we see by the end of this film, it ends on just them shopping. That's all it is, right? And
at a point where they're just completely empty. Like just the only amount of love that they have for each other at this point is the bare minimum, and they've just realized that. I mean, I guess technically he never did it,
but she never did either. That's the thing, right?
And after you see that Odyssey, you're like, I mean, you may not have had sex, but it sure feels like you did.
Something gross happened.
It still feels like you had gross sex.
Well, one of the grossest scenes for me, and really hammers home that part, is when it involves the prostitute character Mandy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And she's the girl who's at the Christmas party at the beginning, who he is on call for Sidney Pollack's character. By the way, it's the director, the famous filmmaker Sidney Pollack plays the guy.
Oh, okay.
I forget his character name in the movie, but
Is it Alan?
It might be.
Yeah.
He's the guy who has the Christmas party. He's the guy who tells Cruz.
He has the big final scene, too,
yes,
right?
he has the most expository scene in the film.
That scene scares the shit out of me. I think maybe even more than the actual sequence. 'Cause
Yeah.
It feels like... And I mean, once again, a little bit of conspiratorial brain going on.
But he's
it feels like he's speaking to the audience more so than Cruz at that point. It's so weird.
And just the way that he said, he's like, I know what you saw,
Yeah.
and I know what you felt.
Yeah.
But dude, like, it's fine, man. Like the way that he talks to him like he's a friend, even though he's on another entirely different class plane.
Yeah.
And
quite honestly, I think would have Cruz killed if he absolutely needed to do it.
Yes.
You know, he definitely has that vibe.
And Sidney Pollack
it
is
still
honestly,
feels like a threatening scene.
Yes,
you know?
even though Sidney Pollack, he's kind of plays it warm. Like
Oh,
he kind of plays it like
Feels
I'm your
like you
friend,
have a
man.
beer with the guy.
We're
Easy.
just having a good time here. Do you want to play some pool?
He even feels like that when you see him with the almost dead hooker that he
which
just
is the scene I was
with.
talking about, Mandy.
He
Yes,
still feels like a likable guy. It's the weirdest thing. Like, and you don't. He's clearly a disgusting piece of shit, but he does have a charm.
Yeah.
Where it's like where he just feels warm and welcoming, and it does add to the gross factor.
Well, and one of the grossest parts for me is that he observes Mandy, who has OD'd in his like bathroom/bedroom combination thing that he's got there.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a big old
rich
combo
people
room.
things, you know, whatever. I haven't heard of it, but it's fine. And Tom Cruise goes in there and he's like, you know, it was very close. You should probably stop trying to do stuff like this. It's not
Maybe
really...
stop doing coke and heroin at the same time.
And then it's implied heavily that she's the one who notices him at the party and is the one who tells him to leave because she's like, I'm already in this, and you don't have to be in this, so just go.
Yeah.
She winds up dead from an overdose, and he reads about it in the paper, and he's obviously terrified. He's like, wow.
That's a coincidence.
That's a coincidence. And also my medical school classmate has also disappeared and was last seen being taken out by giant men, beaten up into a car. And he's like, it's fine. He's in Seattle with his family. It's cool. I'm like, okay, all right.
That's the thing too. And what's real creepy is that at first, more so speaking about the hooker, I can't remember her name, but Mandy. He talks to her like he straight up just goes at first before he says she overdosed whatever. He just goes, it's a hooker. Just like, don't even, like, why are you even worried about it? That kind of thing.
She's on a different class
and
level,
then
man.
he starts to kind of give the whole, like, she died, she overdosed, she had sex at the party, she overdosed when we dropped her off at home, that's it. And at that point, I'm like, I don't fucking believe you at all.
No.
Not even a little. The way that you clearly disrespect her and have, like, just any...
Oh, yeah,
any
he thought
respect.
of her as trash.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you killed her.
Yeah, well, and also...
I love that they never tell you, though.
That was what I was going to say. The genius stroke there is that they don't show you the guy being killed when he could very well, and they just don't. So you have to sit there and go, it's all implied, which is like really, I think, even more powerful to leave that ambiguity in there. But when he has to go to the morgue and identify her body, and he identifies her because of her breasts, because he's only ever seen her naked ODing with like her face partially covered.
Yeah.
And then he saw her naked body with a mask on, and then he sees her naked body on the slab. And all of a sudden the scenes that were previously, you know, maybe he might have been a little horny because she was naked, now it's really gross.
Yeah,
and the thing that he says to her about her, who? The chick that OD'd with the great tits?
Yeah.
That's what Sidney Pollack says about her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right after the scene where he just looked at her on a slab and is like horrified.
Yeah.
So like that to me is one of like just the most like explicitly gross moments where again it's tying in like this base primal desire stuff with like a more clinical critique of obviously the rich and the powerful, like combining those two things in that way.
Yeah.
That part I found like one of just the most like viscerally compelling parts of it. And but on a less serious note, I love every time Tom Cruise is trying to get his way, he whips out his goddamn medical board license like it's a freaking police badge.
Oh, yeah,
every
yeah.
time. He does it like 6 times in the movie, and every time I cackle because I'm just like, dude. He goes up to the guy because for some reason there's a guy who lives in his costume store. He goes up to the costume store and he puts it up against the glass. He's like, I'm a medical professional. Let me in. And he's just like, all right.
I don't think that's how it works, but that's fine. You're well educated, man. Let's do this.
I'm a doctor.
That's true. He does. That's so funny.
Every time. That stuff just made me laugh.
That is funny.
Every time. And I mean, it's also just Cruise's character. I find he's just kind of, he plays this like really wiry dude who's just like he bumbles around and he's just a confused ball of impulse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
confused is really the thing. Like,
yeah.
Although he is obviously not the best guy, it really does feel like he's just completely unaware of himself. Like, he doesn't know who he is.
Yeah.
And so it almost feels like he's just trying his best to figure it out.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he ends up in some horrible places to do so. But yeah, also just speaking on that Pollock scene, I love the
ordinary people thing, or
if I told you their names, I don't think you'd sleep so well. That line's always given me the creeps, just because it's like you didn't need to throw that in there. That just seems too much. That's too real. That's too real for me. And then the other one, which is where I think it further implies that he did, maybe not him obviously, but he knows about the killings that go on within this scene. Was at the end when he grabs Tom Cruise's shoulders, and you can just feel the fear that Cruise is feeling at that point.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, life goes on until it doesn't. But you know that, don't you? And then
he laughs.
Yeah. And you're like, oh my God, dude, you killed a guy. It's just like that whole scene terrifies the shit out of me.
And for what? Like these bizarre rituals where like, it's like, how did anyone get any pleasure
And
out
then
of
he
it?
mentions too, it's like, why do they do the rituals? And he's just like, it's to scare the shit out of you so you don't say anything. It's like, it doesn't mean anything to us. We do this so that you shut your mouth. Because when you see something like this, any human brain would go, I'm not fucking with this crew of people, you know? Yeah. So I just that's also scary too. Is that
and those people rule you?
I'd almost
is the thing
want it
too.
to be demonic. You know what I mean? Like the fact that they're
summon
just
Satan a little.
The fact that they're just doing it to basically bribe you and blackmail you and all that. That's I'd rather the devil raise from hell. You know?
No, 100%.
And then the scene after where we see the mask on the thing, and he just breaks.
Down.
He's done. He's like, all right, I'll tell you my entire night or my entire
yeah, it all takes place in
week
24 hours.
yeah. So he's like, it's just, and I love the line. It's very simple, but I'll tell you everything. Just because after everything that you've seen, that's what this whole thing has been leading to, right? It's just him to be honest with his fucking wife.
Yeah.
And he had to go through all that to get there, but he got there, you know. So that's good for him, I guess. But yeah, just the breakdown and saying like, I'll tell you everything. Just I'm at my finish line. I don't need to journey anymore. You know.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just devastating to watch.
Yeah, because it's just watching like this performance of a guy who is just a great husband, a perfect doctor. You know, he's everything.
Yeah.
He's everything. He's the perfect husband.
Yeah.
And he plays it perfectly.
Oh yeah.
And then he's confronted with like, I'm playing my part of the upper class doctor. And I'm like, holy shit, all of the people I know who are even more powerful than me, they're also performing.
Yeah.
They're performing this philanthropic Christmas party.
Yeah, right. Right.
When really what they are is this. And he's like, I'm not quite that.
Yeah.
So I can admit my, shortcomings as well here.
And what's interesting too is like it really doesn't show well for his character is the scene where he goes back to the costume spot.
Yeah.
And then the guy just basically goes, if you ever need to have sex with my daughter, it's all good. That's basically what he says.
Yeah.
And Cruz, he does have a disgusting look on his face, which is good. At least there's a positive trait there. But he doesn't do anything.
No, he doesn't like report
say anything.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, like, maybe report it. I don't know what connection you have with the costume guy. You know what I mean? Like, the other ones, I don't condone them, but it's like, the politics. He's a rich friend, whatever.
Yeah.
The costume dude is like pimping out his daughter, man. Maybe call the cops.
Yeah, but then as
But he
you said,
doesn't.
also it gets connected into everything else, right?
That's-
like
that's
everything.
true.
I mean,
He
like
at that point, yeah, he probably has that fear that it's just like this could be. He wants out. You know what I mean?
well, at that point, he's still trying to ignore it. He's trying to be like,
Yeah.
it's not there. That weird perversity's not there. I'm just going to a party.
Yeah. No, this was after the party.
Oh yeah, this was after the party,
Yeah,
right?
so this was so he sees all the stuff, and
Right.
then he's confirmed
'Cause he goes twice,
And
right.
what's interesting is that the first time it appears that the father is insanely upset at the daughter.
Yeah.
And he's like, she's demented, like she's not all there, so this thing happens, and I'm trying not to make it happen. But then it's revealed that he's just like, yeah, I do this, and in fact, if you'd like to, there you go,
Your turn.
And I think that is. I mean, he's already at the finish line, Cruz, at this point, I think, but that probably just sent him over the edge.
Well, I was gonna say, like, this is where his reality has already started to look like a bad paint job
Yeah,
on like this
yeah.
like unhinged,
Yeah.
dark perversity
yeah,
that
he's
like
I miss missionary sex.
yeah, it's like the intersection of like violence and kink and like power and illusion.
Yeah.
And money and fantasy, but also he's disgusted and curious at the same time about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
So yeah, maybe pivoting towards the reductive rating round. I got to say, I think that I mean, obviously it's a 5. It's,
Me too. And then, I mean, like and then also to end your movie, let's fuck.
Yeah.
Hard cut credits.
Yeah.
Oh baby.
What a mic drop and
And
for that to be
final film.
Yeah.
You know, like final scene I'll ever create. Let's fuck credits.
Yeah. Well, because
What a madman.
I don't know if they ever planned on cutting the film down more or anything.
I heard that there's 40 minutes that no one's seen,
Well, because Kubrick.
and I want to see it.
But Kubrick did finish a cut of the film, showed it to Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, and died 6 days later.
Shit,
So
that's crazy.
that was.
So do you know who had the final? Is it the editor that had like kind of the final?
I'm not 100%
Yeah.
certain. From what I understand, they tried to keep it as true to the cut that Tom and Nicole saw. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure.
I want to know what's in that 40 minutes, baby. What did he leave out?
Yeah. It's
The Illuminati got to him.
it's just more extended sequences of like slow, mesmerizing, trance-like camera moves.
Yeah.
Moving through these like given spaces. It's just even more weird Odyssey scenes.
yeah, exactly. That's probably what it is.
Of just paranoid, single-minded desire and frustration all around. Both sexual frustration and also narrative frustration.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I want to know some answers here. And I do like that he doesn't really give you any. Even in the
No.
big expository scene, you can't really trust what Pollack is saying.
No, if anything, it just gives more, like, just ominous mystery, and
It tries to put back a friendly face on what we just saw, which was the
Yeah.
most inhuman thing you've ever seen.
right
That involved human
and
bodies.
It's so creepy for him to just be like, "Come on, man, just have a neat whiskey. It's all good what you just saw.
Take a
It's
bottle."
normal. It's performance art. No big deal."
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's got to get the 5, and
Yeah, me too.
I think ultimately, just the way that Kubrick captures this idea of like realizing that the world that you're a part of, the world that you see every day, maybe isn't the actual world, and maybe it's actually a facade used to like mask, you know, like a more primal self that you've kind of like you've collectively agreed to put these acceptable norms to like dissuade you from ever doing that.
Yeah.
But you can just ignore that when all of a sudden you have money. That money means you don't have to adhere to those things anymore. And so there are now these further hidden structures around you that
There's always
just have
something to discover.
horrifying outlets for sex and violence. Like, say, maybe plains and islands. You know, it doesn't have to be mansions and
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, we definitely know what you're saying.
But
Didn't kill himself.
I also do like the end where they are confronted with this. We're honest with each other. We've admitted Tom Cruise has seen the end of the rainbow.
He didn't like it.
And he was like, the end of the rainbow is so much worse than whatever I could admit to you.
I'm going back to the middle of the rainbow.
So the best that you can...
The upper middle class.
The best
rainbow.
that you can do is just ignore that it's there and go back to the ways that you're supposed to indulge in it, which is in the bedroom,
Yeah.
which is what Nicole Kidman says. She
Just
says, fuck.
Ignore the crazy world and get to fucking.
Yeah, and what a god move, for real, to have the last thing uttered in your last movie to be just
honestly.
the word fuck.
True king. True king. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 5 too. I don't know how else to explain what we've already explained, because just what a film. One thing I want to just reiterate, that score, I think that bare bones score,
Yeah.
really helps with the tone. Like, it's just every time that really dissonant piano note comes up, you know something's lurking. You know, something's watching them. It's perfectly done. And it's just so simple.
I feel like it always implies that, like, there's this weird detail, or this there's something gross and
It's like
violent.
2 notes.
Some sort of transgression is about to happen, and you're watching these scenes and you're like, this is just fucked up.
Ooh, here's one. I'll just mention this before we head it off.
Oh, yeah.
I love and it's nothing, not analyzing it too much, but I just, the thought of when he goes back to the mansion, I think he just like has to have a look, and the car slowly comes up. An old man just walks out, says not a word, hands him an envelope with his full name on it, and the threat. What I love in the threat is that it's not just like, stop now, we'll kill you.
No, it's very wordy.
It's very wordy. It's like, we need you to stop your inquiries.
Yes, I have it right here. So it's
okay,
give up your inquiries, which are completely useless, and consider these words a second warning. We hope, for your own good, that this will be sufficient.
And I love that it's like, we hope. Like, we don't want to do this, but we will.
Yep.
And that's just... And the whole thing, just him getting out of this black car, he's in a black
totally
suit.
Anonymous, boring-looking
this
dude.
Old guy that's just blank face, hands him an envelope. There it is, your threat. And if you don't do it, we're going to do something. And there's such a...
Again, it's
so
finding
creepy.
horror and like surreal qualities out of something that's just so boring. It's just a guy in a car.
And there's
in a
no
suit.
dialogue.
Yeah.
They just stare at each other, and it's just this creepy vibe. Yeah, it's great.
It really is the feeling of that one sequence in The Shining where there's just rich people being rich people, fucked up parties.
Yeah.
Like the dog
it's
blowing
like,
the old dude.
It's that for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's like
that's perfect.
That bizarre sense of what the fuck, and also horror, and also intrigue.
Yeah, exactly. Just, I'm horrified, but I want to know more. Damn it.
Yes.
Yeah. So
and
5.
And I do like Tom Cruise's line that he gets to, where he says, "No dream is ever just a dream," and she says, "We're awake now."
Yeah.
And you're almost like, do you want to be awake now?
Yeah.
I feel like I'd want to go back to not knowing.
Let's go back to the party, and before he met the almost dying prostitute.
Yes.
Where he's just flirting, just flirting with 2 models. That was fun.
Exactly. Well, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Merry Christmas. I feel like I'm in the spirit.
And Happy Hanukkah to
Yes,
anyone
Happy
who's
Hanukkah.
celebrating.
Happy holidays
There's not a
all
huge
around.
canon of Hanukkah movies, but
Yeah, we should try to see if they're out there. There's got to be 2.
Well, I've heard there's one called The Hebrew Hammer.
Oh,
yeah.
hell yeah.
Sounds like
And a sequel.
And a sequel.
I am there.
So it sounds like some good old exploitation. And I can add, and I can recommend to anyone who it's available to, Uncut Gems in the US, I think, is opening in theaters around the time that you guys are going to be listening to this. That absolutely is going into the Hanukkah canon. So go check that one out. Loved that one.
Wait.
I can't wait to show it to Jamie. Got it programmed at the theater, so we're real psyched.
I love seeing Adam Sandler do good.
But Merry Christmas. That was our very deranged, existential, horny-ass double feature of just absolutely unhinged, insane, murderous, sexual holiday films.
Yes.
I don't know that there's any more that really fit into that category, so I'm glad we got this double feature out of the way.
I was amazed at how much they connected.
Yeah, and weird about this idea of also putting on performances and this idea of old money in control of things behind the surface, the sinister forces lingering just beneath kind of deal. Like both of them really did deal with that, just in completely different ways.
Yeah.
So that was your Christmas double feature. I think in 1 week's time, we are going to be back with the very last episode of 2019, a patron-exclusive episode for our bonus listeners, and it is episode number 100.
Crazy.
Somehow, we got this far.
Yeah, we did it.
100 episodes, and patrons already know this, but for anyone who's not a patron yet, we let the patrons vote on episode 100. Since it was going to be the last of the year, and it was going to be an episode exclusively for them, we decided we'd let them vote. So we had them come up with double features and then upvote the double features, and then from there I put those in a poll and everyone voted. And the number one selected double feature is what we're going to cap the year out on. And weirdly enough, it actually kind of works with Eyes Wide Shut. About peeling back the overlords who control your world.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We are going to be talking about John Carpenter's 1988 film, They Live. A little bit more on the comic spectrum
for sure.
than Eyes Wide Shut, but similar subject matter. And then we are also going to be talking about Repo Man from 1984.
Yeah, it's like this like punk rock. It's like, is it indie? Like, is it kind of like
grungy a little bit?
For sure.
Yeah, both of them are 80s Reagan era, almost surreal movies about the underclass.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to be talking about for episode 100. Again, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. If you want that episode, that's next week. And then 2 weeks from now, the next free episode for all you guys. It's the first episode of the new year.
Yeah.
So as we like to do, or I guess we're making it a trend officially by doing it for a second time.
Yeah.
We did it last year though. We did the best movies, best genre movies specifically of the year. So last year, obviously, we did the best genre movies of 2018. This year, we're going to do the best genre movies of 2019. Now, for bonus listeners, you guys probably heard some of our bonus transmissions throughout the year. Some of those films are probably going to be on the list.
Oh, for sure.
But some of them definitely will not be. Some of them will have been watching recently. Some of them we just never got around to talking about, maybe on the bonus transmissions.
Yeah.
But Jamie and I are going to count down each our top 10 genre films that came out in 2019. Genre being a little bit loose here like it is on this show. Sometimes we're going to talk about action movies, horror movies, sci-fi movies. I'm going to count a certain mobster movie on mine for sure.
I think it counts.
So that is what we're going to be doing in 2 weeks' time. It's going to be a monster episode as it was last year probably, where Jamie and I are going to count down our full top 10s and a bunch of honorable mentions. So if there's any... Again, if you guys
get those
want
lists ready, we got some movies to show.
Yeah, so if you want looking for any suggestions, that will be the episode to listen to. And then after that, we are going to be back into the new year, resuming regular scheduled episodes.
Yes.
So that being said, thanks as always for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy.